Did the recent extensions leave Trey Hendrickson as the odd man out in Cincinnati? We'll discuss that and more on tonight's Bengals Pulse.
Hooday, Bengal fans. He is Eric. He is Mon. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. Yes, a new night this week, but we are excited to be here with you guys on a beautiful Wednesday night, the day before opening day in Cincinnati. Gentlemen, the Reds kick it off tomorrow. I am stoked about this Reds baseball team. Just a lot to be excited about. Obviously, Jamar and T. We're going to be talking about the man, Trey Hendrickson, tonight. The odd guy out right now. But before we do, Mon, how you been doing, buddy?
I'm good. Excited to be on the show tonight. A lot of physical therapy on my shoulder. Had a rough day today with some new exercises, but I'm getting stronger. Yeah, believe it or not, I am getting stronger. That happens, I'm pretty strong already. But, it's shoulders getting better. Excited about the draft coming up, and let's talk about the Bengals.
Let's talk a little bit about Bengals. Before we do, though, Eric, my man, how you been doing, bud? You good?
I'm good. I just want to know if Mon's just improving that shoulder so he can point to the beach. Got to get that rotation back so you can point to the beach, right? Yeah. You got to use the
Eric,
other arm.
don't feed that. Do not feed that.
Listen,
we don't need that monster coming up.
Mon, we talked about this before we came on here, but we got to address the elephant in the room. Mon's going no stash spring until the Bengals sign Trey. I kind of try and keep mine trimmed. And then Jake's over here, and we don't see him for a week. He wasn't on last week's show, and he comes back looking like the brawny man out there in Alaska chopping like 7,000 trees down. What's going on here? Is this no shave April? What do we got?
This is no shave April. I'm growing this bad boy out. I'm growing this out until the Cincinnati Bengals bring home a Super Bowl. I am growing this out. Listen, what do you mean? Oh man, you just told me. Didn't you say
that's at least
Joe?
That's at least 10 months. I mean,
Joe. That's why I'm
it's
doing
going to go all the way down to the playbook
like,
in the fall.
He looks like one of the extras from Daredevil. I mean, look at that. I mean, actually he could go for like Daredevil. You really could.
I think I look more like I'm more like the Punisher, guys. I'm more like the Punisher. You know what I mean? I'm that. I am the Punisher. That's what I'm known as. Actually, my wife begged me to grow it out. She absolutely adores it. So happy wife, happy life, that type of thing. So
we might have to call her in just to confirm or deny that. Because
listen, let me tell you something. When this thing is grown out, it is magnificent. When I grow this thing out.
Listen, we got a lot of Ohio State fans here, and I can just imagine at some point he's going to look like Ryan Day, straight out of a Barbie movie where it was drawn on. I don't know, man. We might have to do a poll and say if it should go or stay.
Eric, we've been on the air for 3 minutes and 25 seconds. I wish it would have been 5 minutes because about a minute before we got on, he's yelling.
Yes.
He's screaming for a sandwich. Where's his pasta? He goes, "Where's my food?" He was going crazy.
Do you see anything? There's nothing here. I mean, nobody in this house listens to me. Nobody in this house listens to me.
I'll believe that.
Yeah, hey, sometimes you gotta talk to have a nice conversation with yourself, so someone will actually listen to you. So with that, let's get into the subject of the show, the subject of the hour, the subject of the week. We've got a lot of Trey Hendrickson news out there, but none of it's the news that we really wanted to hear. We heard last week that Trey Hendrickson was reported that he was going to sit out the year. A lot of national media running with that. Trey's going to sit out the year and really force the Bengals' hand. No one really alluding to the fact that Trey's on the upper, the later stages of his career. So any year he sits out is going to really negatively affect him. And then we get report, I think yesterday or the day before, that the all trades are off for Trey. They're not considering that anymore, and they're actively negotiating with Trey Hendrickson to try and get a deal done. So we're here to talk about it. Why don't you guys give us your opening thoughts? We'll go to Mon first. Mon, what are your thoughts on all this Trey Hendrickson's news? What do you make of it?
I think it's promising because I'm not going to lie to you. I was a little concerned it's been a roller coaster. It's been a roller coaster with T. It's been a roller coaster with Hendrickson. I think it's a positive thing. I think the longer this plays out, he's going to be a Bengal. We've said it before. Everybody on this panel up here, I said this. I mean, I'm going to say it again. I think he's the most dominant defensive end in football. Call me a homer, but it's a fact. He doesn't have a counterpart that takes the pressure off of him. He's the only consistent pass rush threat for the Cincinnati Bengals. He doesn't have an interior defensive lineman that can help him. He doesn't have he did have a decent one in Sam Hubbard. Sam Hubbard's retired. He's had some lower leg injuries the last 2 years. He hasn't been the Sam Hubbard that, of years past. Trey Hendrickson has been a one-man show. Every offensive coordinator knows this. Every offensive coordinator has to plan for him, and they still gets 35 sacks over the last 2 years. That is impressive. It really is impressive. And the Bengals are a much better team with him on it, and I hope it gets done, and I think it will get done.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mon. Obviously, I mean, this is a guy who I think we can legitimately say is probably the best free agent signing in Bengals history. I think there's been some good ones for sure, but I think when you look at what Trey Hendrickson has done, really since he's gotten here, I mean, he really. Besides 21, when Larry O and BJ and even Sam, I mean, everybody was contributing that year on the defensive line when it comes to sacks and quarterback pressures and those type of things. I think though, when you look at the sample size of what Trey has done, especially these last 2 years. Listen, we all know how important he is to this defense. And I think some things that you have to look at is, number one, the Bengals did not aggressively go out in free agency and look at edge guys. I know there were reports talking about the Bengals let him go out and seek a trade. And I have said from the beginning, I don't think that was really the case. I think the case was, Trey, go see what your value is, and then we'll talk. I think that's what that was all about. I don't think the Bengals ever had any intentions of trading Trey Hendrickson. Again, if they did, or if they were concerned about it, you definitely would have seen, especially after Sam retired, you definitely would have seen the Bengals active in free agency when it comes to the edge position. You have not seen that at all. There's been edge guys going off the board that were, guys that could probably contribute on this football team, guys that were not very expensive when it came to the cap. But the Bengals have stand pat, and I think they have, because, you can listen to all these media outlets and all of this other clickbait and all this other stuff that people are throwing out there. But really, the only people that know what's going on is the Bengals organization and Trey Hendrickson, and obviously his side. And his people. So I know this has been kind of a crazy thing because it's gone back and forth, and Trey was going to get, there's a trade thing out there, and there's no talks, and now there's talks, and blah, 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 blah. I think the Bengals have always intended on signing Trey Hendrickson, and I think it gets done. I think, Mon, what's going to be interesting, though, is how this contract is structured, because we have seen here this past week that the Bengals set up Jamar and Tease a little bit oddly, as far as not leaving a lot of room on the cap to help with Trey's. So I do think it's going to be interesting to see how Trey's is set up. Maybe a lot or maybe not a lot that first year. It's going to be interesting to see how that works out. But I could see it. I could see it being a 2-year extension on top of the 1 year, and then throwing out there $60 or $70 million to bring that value contract up to 3 years, $82 million or something like that, which would put him right around, I think, the realistic mark of where the Bengals want to be with him. I think you'll see the first 2 years guaranteed. I think the Bengals have broken the mold now with Jamar and T, and I think you will see that in Trey's contract where those first 2 years are guaranteed. I know there's some stuff coming out about T's contract, but listen, the Bengals understand that this defense without Trey Hendrickson is just not going to be very good. And, Trey is a big part of that defense. You look at Mon, the way the Colts structured their teams when it came to putting all the money on the offensive side. Well, they still had 2 pretty good edge rushers on that Peyton Manning-led Colts team. And then they kind of built it around those 2 edge rushers. And I can kind of see the Bengals doing the same thing. I don't know how you feel about it, but I am interested, Mon, to hear about what you think about what this contract of Trey Hendrickson's could look like. Again, I think 3 years, about $82 million. The Bengals owe him 16 now. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I'm going to bracket it per year. I think it's going to be between 26 and 29 million a year. I think they might give him a 3-year contract with an easy out in year 3. I think he's going to wind up on the team. I just don't see how they can't bring him back. He's that important, and it's going to be a very young defense. You said something very interesting. I've read this on numerous sites, numerous prominent Twitter accounts. That it is a good comparison to compare us to the Peyton Manning Colts, with Dallas Clark, those great wide receivers, and Edgerrin James, and they were unstoppable on offense. And the defense did have 2 elite pass rushers. They had a great safety in Bob Sanders. He was hurt a lot. They had some pieces there, but they're a very young defense. The difference was this, guys. The offensive philosophy is not the same. Yes, Peyton Manning did throw it a lot. Yes, they had explosive plays. Edgerrin James ran the ball and ran it a lot. Yeah. They had ball control. I mean, there were games they had the ball 36, 37 minutes. How do you help a defense that doesn't have a lot of talent? You keep the opposing offense on the bench. We've said this numerous times here. Unfortunately, in Cincinnati, I need to see last year, very promising. Running game was very promising with Chase Brown. I need to see more. When we signed T and Jamar, stats came out, we throw the ball 67% of the time. That's fine. It's not going to change. It might go to 64, 65. But you know what? That 33% of the time that we do run the ball, what if we run it a little bit more efficiently? What if we add 0.5 yards per carry or 1 yard per carry? Guess what? That's going to control the clock. That's going to keep the defense for the Bengals on the bench. And it's going to keep Joe Burrow out on the field. The more time he has on the field, the more opportunities we're going to score. Guess what? His passing attempts might dip because we're running the ball a little bit more efficient. The best way to help the Bengals' struggling defense is to control the ball, control the clock. All right? And I think it's going to take a team effort to do that. Trey Hendrickson is going to be a big part of that defense. I didn't say that word, did I?
No, you didn't. But,
okay, because you're smiling. No, you're smiling. Did I just say that?
You were talking about that, I sweat a little.
Okay. No, I saw you smile. I'm like, did I say it again? Okay.
Listen.
Okay.
We're live. We're all here for Mon's proper pronunciations. An outtake would be fine though. We just might not be able to recommend that video to younger kids. On this notion, I got a question for you guys. The news that the trade is off the table. So there's a lot of people. There's glass half full, glass half empty. Some people are out there just saying, happy you have a glass. Be happy they're negotiating. Let me go to you first, Mon. Was this a tactic by the Bengals to say, listen, we're not trading you anymore. You come to the negotiating table? Or was this more of a sign of they're close? We're not talking trade anymore because they're close. What's your opinion on that, Mon?
I think it's a positive. I think they are close. And for Edgerrin James, his team today, the guy on ESPN, what's his name? The kicker.
McAfee.
Pat McAfee, West Virginia guy. He said that he heard that they're close to agreeing.
Listen, real quick, no one has ever confused McAfee for Edgerrin James in their life.
But they were teammates.
Good job. They were Colts. And McAfee, for his own right, is a very good athlete. He was out there doing some crazy stuff. But go ahead.
Listen, guys that graduate from West Virginia are elite athletes. I mean, it's God's country, and I know I'm wearing a Florida State shirt because my kid works there, and my wife graduated from there. But that's not about that. It's I'm just wearing.
Just because
I'm
you
not a
went to
fan.
West Virginia doesn't mean you don't make good choices. I mean, you chose Heather, you chose to let your kids go to Florida State, so good for you.
Well, Olivia went to Florida Southern, and she's in the chat. She's at UMass. But hey, enough about that. Let's get back to Trey Hendrickson and everything we were talking about. I think it was a good sign that that the elite that trades off the table. I think that's a really good sign. Now, would I be shocked if they ended up trading them? No, because football's crazy. Football is bonkers, and I just I would rather this get done sooner than later. The draft is 30 days away, a few weeks away. I want him signed, sealed, and delivered well before the draft. I think that's a huge part because if it falls apart, hey man, you got a chance to fix it at number 17. So let's get it. Let's get a resolution well before the draft.
I think you have to look at this real quick too. I just want to say this about going back to that. I mean, obviously, Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis, they were incredible players, but and you're right about the culture running the football and running that style of offense. And I do think that's what the Bengals would like to get to. The Bengals do other things, extensions of the run game, which they weren't really doing a lot back then. The smokes and the fires and all that stuff. But what I want to say is, that the Bengals, this guy Trey Hendrickson, I think he has 57. I think I want to say 57 sacks in his 4 years as a Bengal, which is just absolutely incredible. And when you look at as a Bengal fan and what kind of help he has had on that defensive line, it's even more impressive. And the value of an edge rusher, whether he's 30 or 32, whatever the case may be, the value, it's there. It's there for Trey Hendrickson. I don't think there is any non-value in the Bengals signing Trey. And I think the Bengals understand that. And again, I want to say this. I really don't think there was ever any intention of the Bengals trading Trey Hendrickson. I just don't see it. I think this, though, has to be done before the draft. It has to be done before the draft because the Bengals going into draft night need to know what that defensive line is going to look like, because that defensive line without Trey Hendrickson is going to need a lot more help than the defensive line with Trey Hendrickson. So I know the Bengals have been mocked a lot of edge guys, and I hope that's what they do. I hope they go edge. But right or wrong, the Bengals have got to get this done before the draft. This cannot be something that lingers after the draft and the Bengals really not knowing what direction they need to go into on draft night. Correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We all had a checklist, an off-season checklist. The big three were the top, Chase Higgins and Hendrickson. We got two of them. Hopefully we get that third one. And the fourth on that checklist was improving the offensive line and defensive line. So far, we've gotten two pieces, TJ with Slayton and Lucas Patrick. And I think they're good. They're good players. They're not what I expected. I expected a little bit more of a splash, but we've still got time to improve those spots.
So I want to add just looked up some stats real quick. Excuse me. When you compare it to the Colts, looking at the Super Bowl season is very comparable to what the Bengals outline or way of getting to the Super Bowl and winning it is. Points for in that Super Bowl season, they were second out of 32 teams in the NFL. They averaged 26.7 points a game. Points against, they were 23rd of 32 teams. They gave up 22.5 points per game. The Bengals defense, what we give up 25.5 last year in a horrific season. That's really kind of the outline for how the Bengals really are going to be going down this pathway the way we are currently. I would argue against that we need to draft another edge, or especially not in the first two rounds. Yes, Trey needs help, But where does Trey need help? Trey needs help in the interior defensive line pressure. He needs help up the middle because there were so many times where Trey was screaming off the edge. He made the quarterbacks move, and what they do? They just slipped up right through the middle of that line. They either took off or they were able to take a step and make a pass. Trey needs that pocket to collapse from the inside so they have nowhere to go, and that puts them right back into Trey's hands, or it puts them into the defensive lineman's lap, and then we're in business. That's all we need.
And that's my point in this. That's why the Bengals have to get this done before the draft, because to me, the interior of the defensive line, if Trey is signed, is where the Bengals need to go with that first pick. If Trey is not signed and it starts to get a little washy, then the Bengals have got to look at the edge. If there's any doubt of what's going on with the Trey Hendrickson situation. So that's my point. Sense. That's exactly my point, Eric, is the Bengals have got to get this done, because if it's done, then you feel a little bit better if they go and draft an interior defensive line, or even in Mon's dream world, an interior offensive lineman. You feel a lot better about that than if the Trey Hendrickson situation is not done and the Bengals go draft a guard. You're not going to feel good about that. If the Trey Hendrickson situation is still up in the air and the Bengals draft a guard in the first round, it's going to be crash out time, because you just can't possibly feel good about that situation. If Trey's done, then it opens up the draft. It opens up the Bengals' ability to go get, one of the top offensive linemen or one of the top interior defensive linemen.
So this is the draft where we have probably a top 5 pick that plays cornerback and wide receiver. Do we have a defensive lineman out there that also plays guard? We could get 2 for 1. I mean, we might have to go to North Dakota State. Growing up where I'm from, we played 9-man Ironman football. They played both ways. Listen, go get a 2 for 1. Defensive tackle and right guard, solve it all in one fell swoop. Maybe there's somebody playing in West Virginia.
I can tell you this right now, that if that ever happened in the NFL, to go out and play both sides of the trenches would be a lot harder than to play corner and wide receiver. A lot.
For sure. Well, and Dave Lapham played all 5 offensive line positions in one game. So I'm sure if it happened in the 70s or the 80s. It's definitely not happening.
It probably did. I'm sure it did.
Yeah. So there was some other news that came out, and Andre Parada was on Ace and Sim shows last night. And if you guys haven't seen it, go check it out, because it was a really good breakdown of some of the contract stuff that came out there. But the Bengals took a lot of heat over the weekend for the way they structured the bonuses. They neglected to prorate the bonuses over the whole course of their extensions. Essentially, what it did was cost Bengals cap space this year, and didn't bring us really more than $2.5 million extra in the additional years.
Yeah.
So everybody's kind of litigated this to death. Why'd they do that? Bengals are cheap. Why'd they go there? Came out today. Some people speculated that maybe this was a ploy to use in the Trey Hendrickson negotiations and show that, hey, we don't have as much cap space. We need you to work under these parameters because we don't have the space. Do you guys have any thoughts on that, Mon? I saw you shaking your head first. Do you have any thoughts on if that was used for this contract negotiations?
Well, I'm trying to think how I could say it diplomatically, but I'm not going to be diplomatic about it. I just mentioned the checklist. The most important thing was signing the big 3, and you can't be unhappy. They did sign T and they did sign Jamar. Hopefully they get trade knocked out. Now, I will say this. We talked about it about a week before they signed him. It was going to save potentially $4-6 million on T's contract, maybe $5-6 million on Jamar's. They ended up saving $350,000. That's just the way the Bengals structure contracts. I think it was a mistake. I think it's a horrible way to do it. Everybody on this show right now has said this 5-6 times this offseason. 6 draft picks aren't enough. There's not enough quality free agents out there to improve this roster. The Bengals have elite skill players, some of the best in the NFL. Still wasn't enough to get us to the playoffs. We have glaring weaknesses at guard and on the defensive line and safety positions. We have serious glaring weaknesses. They were so bad it offset career years, NFL top tier years of all time. It canceled them out. There's not enough draft picks to fix these spots. It's going to go a long way in helping the roster. It is. Okay, I get it. The Bengals can't sign Will Fries. I get it. That's a lot of money. There was a lot of free agents out there early on that $12 million more they could have gotten. It's a fact. Lucas Patrick is a nice little quality depth piece. Guys, if Cody Ford and Lucas Patrick are starting at guard next year, I mean, come on. We got to be better than that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people are saying, crashing out this on Twitter, that Bengal fans can't be happy. We can walk and chew gum. We can acknowledge the fact that Trey or T and Chase signing these contracts are going to be Bengals for a long time. That's awesome. But we can also acknowledge, how can you not lower your cap hit to give you more flexibility to go out and get better players at key spots that ruined a career year for Joe Burrow, ruined a career year for Jamar Chase, and ruined a great year for T. Higgins. I mean, that offense was unfreaking stoppable, wasn't good enough. And I don't want to hear about a missed field goal here, missed fumble, field goal here, we have fumble. The Bengals should have had 4 or 5 more 10 double-digit wins.
Yeah.
It shouldn't come down to a field goal. They should have had 4 more double-digit wins. Don't ever let it come down to a field goal attempt when your team is that dominant on offense. And, we scored all those points with horrible guards. We saw our quarterback get killed. He was pummeled. He's running for his life. He's such a special talent. He still found a way to score 40 points a game.
Yeah.
Guys, it's not sustainable. Those hits are not sustainable. Got to fix them.
Well, and I think too, this is my thing. And now you guys got me riled up. This is my thing is, yes, I agree, Mon, 100%. The Bengals, we all know this. I mean, Mon, you and I have been fans for a very long time, 40 plus years, and they have always done these contracts goofy. They're goofy. They don't make sense sometimes and all that. But again, this is what just pisses me off is that these NFL pundits have always got to find a way to trash the Bengals. It is almost laughable at this point, right? I mean, again, we know that the Bengals front office, they have their issues 100%, but they go out and they re-sign. They do something that nobody said they would do. They do something that nobody said they could do, and they did it, right? And we're talking about signing Gesicki, T, and Jamar, right? But all they do is get trashed. So people find a way, and I'm not talking about us because we as Bengal fans, again, we just know this front office is goofy and it's frustrating. But for national pundits to, just literally try to find a way to trash the Bengals, you cannot tell me that the other 31 teams in the NFL don't do ridiculous, goofy contracts. You never hear about any of that ever from any other team. And I'm not trying to be a conspiracist here, but it is almost becoming laughable the way the Bengals are trashed and attacked about the way they do things. Listen, they did what no one said they would do. They did what no one said they could do, and they got it done. And if they get Trey done, then the national media is not going to know what to do themselves because they're going to have to find someone else to trash. But this Bengals organization, as goofy as they are and as badly as sometimes they do things, they got it done. And for them to be trashed for that is absolutely ridiculous by anybody. Again, we as Bengal fans, we can be frustrated with the fact that there's not as much cap money that we would like out there. But for people on the outside to trash the Bengals because they're trying to find a way to trash them, it just pisses me off. It's almost becoming laughable how these people attack the Bengals about every single thing that they do. It's just ridiculous.
I agree with you. I think it's cheap shots, but we know when reputable people that follow the Bengals 24/7, like let's talk. The Locked On guys had a really great analysis of this. Liskow and Rapine. Jake is like Parada, really follows the salary cap. The savings we could have created easily with Chase and Higgins could have been Josh Sweat. It would have been enough money to sign him. It could have been enough money to sign Javon Holland. Those are elite free agents.
Yeah.
Guys that would have fit a major need. But it's just like you said, the Bengals they don't want future cap hits, but the savings would have been minimal over the next 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating.
The other frustration is they could have saved that money. They could have extended those cap hits. They could have saved that money, and they didn't even have to spend it. They can roll it over till next year. It's not creating that much space. But when you go and structure the deal like that, you just feed into the narrative that you're a cheap organization, because now it looks like you didn't do it that way, because then it makes it look like you're spending closer to the cap and you can't go sign these other guys.
I think Jake's frustration is legit here, and this is what frustrates me. And I know he said the same thing. But when national pundits say Bengals can't do it, they can't sign T, there's no way they're going to sign T, there's no way they're going to sign Jamar, then they flip the script like, oh, that was a stupid move. Why would you do that? Hey, man, 2 weeks ago you said they couldn't do it. And now all of a sudden it was stupid. And then the one that gets me is, T's contract really wasn't guaranteed. 5 days after he signed his contract, he got $20 million up front. He gets another $10 million before the first snap of the season. So are the Bengals just going to give him $20 million and say, hey, we're going to cut you? Of course not. It's just the way they structure it. It's $30 million guaranteed year one, which is more than the 26, and he gets another $10 million. He gets his salary during the season. That's $40 million bucks.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Listen, CC, I'm not disagreeing with you. The front office deserves criticism from Bengal fans, from true Bengal fans. The front office deserves criticism. The front office does not deserve criticism from national NFL pundits that don't know their ass from a hole in the ground, because they're lazy and they don't watch Bengal games. They obviously don't, because they think that Alex Kappa was our best offensive lineman last year. There is not these national pundits need to start being held accountable for just their absolute ridiculous. And really, to be honest with you, nothing that they have said about the Bengals in this offseason has been held to fruition at all. They obviously are just trying to find a team to bash, and it's always the Bengals. That's what pisses me off. I don't care about the criticism on the front office as long as it's coming from Bengal fans that follow the team, not from national pundits that are trying to get clickbait. That's what pisses me.
Eric, can you get the question up there that I got real quick?
Sure.
Hey, Tony, I don't know if this is a lot of people were critical of Trey because he can't play the run very well. And there was an analysis done on his sacks. He has 7.5 of his sacks of his 17 came in 2 games. So people look at it like he only got 10 sacks for the other games remaining. Hey, fine. If you want to critique him, he got 3.5 against, I think 4 against the Steelers. He got 7.5 sacks in 2 games. Do you know Max Crosby, who everybody in the world thinks is better than Trey Hendrickson, which I don't personally. But Max Crosby, one of the highest paid defensive ends in football, went 6 consecutive games. 6 consecutive games with only 1 sack during that span. So, you know what? Pass rushers are hit and miss sometimes. But when I don't know if you're trying to criticize him here. Trey Hendrickson is the most consistent of the big pass rushers.
Yes.
TJ Watt had an off year. Myles Garrett, 14.5 sacks, great player. I'm not saying Myles Garrett is a lesser player. I think Myles Garrett's a better player. But Trey Hendrickson has had 35 sacks in 2 years as the only thing going on that defensive line.
And not only that, that's the most of anyone in 2 years, right?
Add this one stat onto last year. Max Crosby had 7.5 sacks all year. You take away those 7.5 sacks that Trey had in those 3 games, he still has 10 sacks. He had as much as Max Crosby had for the whole season in that 3-game stretch. So yes, you can break it down game by game, but I mean, he was the best defensive end in the NFL last year.
And like Mon said, the sacks are hit and miss. That's with every pat. There's no edge guy that goes out there and gets sacks every week. If there were, you're talking about guys having well over 20 sacks every season. It's just unheard of. Listen, Trey Hendrickson in his 4 years in Cincinnati has averaged over 14 sacks a season. I'm not sure anyone else has been that consistent in the NFL. So we cannot be bashing Trey for, well, he had 7 sacks in 2 games. Well, let me tell you, those 2 games that he had 7 sacks, he took over the game and won us a game. I mean, you cannot look at things with a glass half empty. You really can't in this situation, because the edge position, it's people attack it differently. Some days you're going to have off days because teams are like, listen, we are not letting this guy wreck our offense. So we're going to double him. We're going to chip him. We're going to do all these crazy things to keep him away from the quarterback. Trey Hendrickson, to me, is the best pure pass rusher in the NFL. I did not say he's the best defensive player. I am just saying pure pass rushing, he is the best in the NFL. And I'm not sure you could argue that. Myles Garrett is the best defensive player in the NFL, hands down. But the best pure pass rusher in the NFL is Trey Hendrickson.
All right, so switching gears, because I want to, we're already 38 minutes in here, and we didn't want to do too long of a show, but want to get you guys' opinion on this. The Bengals do have a long history of fitting those and feeding those narratives. When they say they're cheap, they actually are cheap. They don't go out and do something. That was the narrative for the longest time. Well, then they went out and signed Joe Burrow. Well, they had to do it. It was Joe Burrow. Well, now they went out and did, they're not going to do it with Jamar. They're not going to do it with T. And if they do, it's going to go up to the beginning of the season. Well, they went out and did it. So now we're all sitting around and kind of waiting for them to figure something out with Trey. Will they do it? Won't they do it? To me, every one of these dominoes that falls feels like this is another year that they break that narrative. I think everybody on this podcast agrees that Trey's going to get done at some point here, hopefully sooner than later. Want to get your guys' thoughts on this. Do you guys think that this is the year where the Bengals really start breaking all these narratives? I mean, right now we're kind of faced with no Trey extension, which we think is going to happen, but then we're faced with they don't go out and sign offensive linemen to protect Joe. They don't get those guys. Are we just kind of sitting on the edge of the dominoes that are teetering here, where we're going to get a Trey Hendrickson extension to break that narrative, and then maybe we do get a Brandon Scherf or a Will Hernandez to sign? Or am I just, is that just pipe dreams for me? Mon, why don't you go first?
I mean, I'm going to try to answer it this way. I think the Bengals have changed so much since Joe Burrow became face of the franchise. But it's not going to be enough. It's going to take a championship. I think the national mid-narrative, even the local narrative. I mean, you have to admit the Bengals deserve some heat with like the Whitworth situation, even Zeitler, even Jesse Bates. We've talked about that for years. But, they deserve a lot of praise by, keeping Burrow, drafting Burrow, keeping Chase, all that. We've talked about that also. It's never going to change until we win a championship. It's not. I think it's just that simple. They have to win it. And then all this stuff, people are going to have to find something else to talk about.
Okay. So I agree with that. That's what's going to take for the national narrative. What's it going to take? And I'll go to you for this, Jake. What's it going to take to satisfy us Bengals fans in this offseason? Is it just a Trey extension? For me, it's a Trey and a guard, and then we go into the draft. What is it going to take for Bengals fans, Jake?
I don't want to speak for everybody, but I'm going to speak for myself. I want to see this team hit a home run in the draft. I want to see this team go out and draft in the first couple rounds guys that are going to make impacts immediately. I want to see that. To me, if that happens and the Bengals find 2 or 3 guys from this draft that are just home run guys, like every other team does all the time, this Bengals team will be competing for a Super Bowl. They will. Mon said it earlier. There are holes on this team that the Bengals have got to fill. And it looks like it's going to happen in the draft. And for that to be the case, the Bengals are going to have to draft better and develop better right away, because these young guys are going to have to make an impact immediately. For me, that is what will make me feel good about this. Is at this point, listen, the Trey Hendrickson thing, I think that's going to get done. So I'm not really even putting that into the equation, because I think that gets done. The free agent market is pretty much dried up. I mean, we got Brandon Sheriff out there, who I still really want. We got Will Hernandez still. There's still some pieces that the Bengals could add for sure. Trey Hendrickson's got to be priority number one. The Bengals have six draft picks in this draft coming up. 3 of them have got to be day one contributors on this team. And I'm not talking about special teams. I'm talking about guys that get important snaps and contribute to this team winning football games, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Jake,
Eric,
yeah.
If that happens, I will be very happy.
Eric, do you have another question? Because I want to veer off here. I just want to ask you guys a question.
No, go ahead.
All right. Bengals pick 17 and 49. Let's just go the first 2 picks in this draft. Justin said this perfectly last week. The Bengals have sort of boxed themselves. They put themselves in a box. We have pretty glaring needs. Does that take BPA out of it? I don't think it should. Zim, I'm scared of that beard. I really am. I
Thank you, Zim.
No, before
it looks like a bad guy in Daredevil.
Jake just finally learned how to use like Snapchat filters. It's not even real.
Yeah. I'm just worried. I'm worried that BPA could be off the table.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, here's something that's catastrophic for me. If you stay at 17 in the first round and you got guys that are ranked, reputable sites ranked 7, 8, 9, 10, or 12, they might not be a glaring position of need for the Cincinnati Bengals. But let's say there's a guard there that at 17 that's ranked 25 to 35. Hey, man, I want them to take the guy that's ranked number 10. I want them to take BPA. I really do.
Unless it's a running back.
But what I'm trying to say is I'm worried at 49. Let's say there's a prospect ranked 60, 55 to 60. That's a guard or an offensive lineman. But there's a guy ranked 30 that's, not a glaring position of need. Would it be smarter for us to go BPA? I don't know, man. It's tough.
Oh,
that's where I
Curtis, don't say that, Curtis. Knock it off. Come on, Curtis.
Curtis, that's funny, dude.
No, it's not, Curtis.
Touche, Jake's
Curtis. Like Jake wasn't on one show, and he's like, I gotta go grow a beard. I gotta dye it, so I look.
I did not dye. Listen, it's not dyed. It's touch of gray. It's not dyed. Curtis, that's good, dude. That's good. Touche.
That's Mon, to your point. That's where I still think that we got to extend Trey, and we got to get one guard so that we don't have to reach for a guard or a defensive end at 17. If we're sitting at 17 and somebody wants to come up and take one of those guys, we can go grab a couple more picks. We can't be pigeonholed, and we're pigeonholed.
Don't get me wrong. If there's an offensive lineman that's ranked 13, 14, 15, 16. Hey, man, by all means, take him.
Yeah.
I don't want to get a lesser prospect because we got that big hole there. Hey, man, listen, I'm not a big running back guy. I'm not an Austin Genty guy. And I know that's not a glaring need for the Bengals. But, man, some people have him a top 10 pick. And if he drops to 17, what's value, man? That's big-time value.
I think what Mon, I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, bro.
No, you're good.
But this is what I think Mon is trying to say, too. Again, we have sat here every single year for years and years and years and years. And Eric, you've been a Bengals fan for a long time too. The Bengals, it frustrates me that it feels like they never go best player available when it's there. And I think, again, I know what some of you guys are saying. Ben's talking about, well, how do you fill the holes? Well, listen,
That's a legitimate question.
it is legitimate, but I think that going best player available, right? I think you cannot fill holes by reaching either, and that's what I think has hurt the Bengals so much over the years. Listen, we needed a tackle. What did the Bengals do? They reached and got Cedric Ogbuehi. He was not the best player in the first round when the Bengals were picking. Cedric Ogbuehi was not. That was a reach. Again, the Bengals do this every single year. What? Billy Price. Listen, well, thank God for Billy Price because we wouldn't have BJ Hill. But you're right. Billy Price was, I mean, think about how bad of a reach that was with Billy Price. So there are players out there that are going to be at 17 if the Bengals sit at 17 that can contribute right away. And I think that is what the Bengals' priority has to be in this draft, is not what do we need, but what players are out there that are going to help us win football games. And go ahead, Eric.
And I think we're all preaching the same thing, and we said it on the our first mock draft show too. But to me, you don't ever want to reach for a position of need in the draft. Where you reach for a position of need is in free agency. Go sign Will Hernandez right now. Plug him in as the starting right guard. And then what happens? You know, you sign him. You sign a defensive tackle.
I think that might happen.
You shore up all those positions in free agency. Reach in free agency, and then when you get to the draft, if a starting you're sitting there at 17 or 49 or wherever you're sitting, and the board falls to you, you look at the top guy on the board and you say, does he replace one of our starters right now? And if he does, he's the guy you draft at any position other than quarterback. That's the way that teams succeed. Why did the Eagles succeed? They weren't out there trying to fill those holes. Those guys fell to them. They drafted them. And then what happened? Those guys went and they won the jobs and they took over and they were a Super Bowl winning team because of it. You don't go out there at 17 and say, man, we really need a guard. The best guard is the 29th best player on the board. Oh, let's pass up on this great cornerback who's rated in the top 10 because we need a guard. No, you take the top 10 ranked cornerback and you let your other guys figure it out. That's where you need to go. And that's going to be one of the things we're going to have to get through the draft and see if we've gotten to that point. Because if we're sitting there and the board is O.J. Howard, John Ross, and Patrick Mahomes again, you certainly don't draft John Ross. You know, you don't go in there. Even at that time, they went in there and said, we're not taking a quarterback because we got Andy Dalton. Well, you passed on Patrick Mahomes. As much as I hate him, if they would have drafted Patrick Mahomes and let him sit behind Andy Dalton like he got to do behind what's the guy's name? Alex, the guy who broke his leg.
Alex Smith.
Alex Smith. Yeah, he got to sit behind 1 year. You know what a difference that would make. So don't put anything off the table. Obviously, with Joe Burrow, quarterback's going to be off the table, but you just go reach right now in free agency. Go plug those holes and plug them a little bit better than a Lucas Patrick. Rant over. Sorry.
Well, let me say this too real quick. Listen, if the Bengals are trying to fill holes, do it the right way and trade back. Trade back. Don't reach. I'm not saying don't draft where you need what positions you need. I'm saying do not reach at 17. Trade back and get the right value for the player. Don't take a guy that I don't know. I keep using Cedric Ogbuehi, but don't take a Billy Price at 17 when you can get a Billy Price at 27 and add a couple of draft picks to your draft pot. Don't do that. Don't just reach at 17 because you're afraid he's not going to be there at 27. You can't do that, guys. Listen, I understand what all of you are saying, but the fact of the matter is the Bengals have not done a good job drafting. They have not done a good job at developing young players. They have not done the things that it takes to go and reach and try to get a player at a draft spot that they are not valued at. Yes.
Just you're right. Just remember, you're absolutely right. And I think we just mentioned it. Billy Price was picked the Bengals had a glaring need at center. Billy Price is like a second round talent. And they, it was, hey, we gotta fill it. And it didn't work out. Again, don't get me wrong, 1749, we're 81, wherever we pick. If there's a player slotted in that range and it's a position of significant need, man, by all means, go for it. Go for it. But if you're looking at somebody at 49, that a player rated 60 or 70, you need to be careful. And Brookie, I agree with what you're saying, but I don't want to draft a third round guard in the second round because we have such a need at guard. You're asking for trouble. You're asking for trouble. Jake, I think you hit it right on the head. I think we're going to do another draft show soon. I think trading back in the first round could be a real possibility. But I want to say one other thing. There could be meltdown mode on Bengals Pulse and NFL or Bengals.com, whatever. If we draft a cornerback at 17 because he falls, don't be surprised if that happens. Don't be surprised if that happens.
Oh, it'll be a meltdown. I'm gonna tear it
now. We're gonna be here for it then.
This is what frustrates me, guys, is that the Bengals have not shown me that they can do what it takes to reach, and that is to develop players. They just have not done a good job at it, especially on the defensive and offensive line. They just haven't. You can give me whatever argument you want to, but there's no argument here. It's factual. There is multiple. I think Bengals fandom said this earlier about it's crazy that the Bengals have not hit on a defensive. They've drafted only defense after Burrow, and they haven't hit on any of those guys. Although Amarius Mims was a first round guy, but they haven't hit. They haven't developed. They haven't done those things the right way, and it has bit this team severely.
I'll just counter with a lot of that is on Lou and his reluctance to play young guys. And it's not just that they haven't hit. I mean, we're pretty much talking first round, second round talent here, but they haven't hit. We don't know what we have in Myles Murphy, and we didn't know what we had in Dax Hill until last year when they were forced to switch him to cornerback. I would counter this whole argument, in recent years we haven't developed those defensive players or those offensive players. But what changed? Offensive line coach gone, defensive line coach gone, defensive coordinator gone, linebackers coach gone. Do we have to give him a clean slate here and say, hey, you haven't developed anybody in the past. You damn well better do it now because you got rid of all your coaches and you brought all these guys that are known for developing young players. I'm going to give him a pass, but you got to, you don't have a long leash. You got to prove it this year because you're going to be playing young guys from last year, young guys from the year before that didn't get to play, and young guys from this year. So it's put up or shut up time, and you're really, this whole episode, it's put up or shut up time with all these young guys, but you'd be stupid to get rid of Trey because he's the old guy that you need out there that really makes this defense go. We're at the 53 mark. Before we do got to get out here, we do appreciate everybody coming and sitting with us tonight and talking our favorite subject. But another big topic in the Cincinnati world, opening days tomorrow. You guys are diehard Reds fans. What are you guys thinking about the night before Christmas in at the Banks, Jake?
I'm excited. I'm excited. If you guys have watched this podcast, you know how I feel about our last manager. So the fact that the fact that the Reds went out and got a legitimate manager who has won, he's been into the dance. He has built teams from the ground up. This young Reds team with his leadership. I'm just a huge Terry Francona fan. I'm a huge fan of his, and I think it was a home run hire. I am so excited to see what this Reds team is going to look like because, just like the Bengals, this Reds team it's young. It's built with these exciting players that are just up and coming guys. There's a lot of injuries last year. Yes. And a lot of those guys are healthy now. And I'm really excited. I am pumped. again, yes, tonight is like Christmas Eve for me. I know Mon is a diehard Reds fan too, so we Mon and I are just, it's year round for us, just misery. It's like we need each other's sympathy because we just crash out all the time with these two teams. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Reds are going to win their division this year. I feel very confident in that, and I do, because the man in charge, we got a good one in Terry Francona. Mom.
I love the manager. Francona's a stud. Ex-Red, by the way. Also, he played for the Reds.
Yep.
For years, when talking about the Reds, it's always been, the problem has been pitching, relief pitching. I think that's probably one of the bright spots right now. I think the pitching is going to be okay. The problem with the Reds, I don't think they have the bats. I don't think they have them. I don't. Ellie De La Cruz, McLean's coming back, good players. Strand's a good player. I just don't know. I know their outfielder they got is hurt. He's on IR. We're going to see. The pitching's going to have to come through. I think, Jake, they could potentially win their division. They could get a wild card. Listen to a good pod today. Mo Egger on ESPN 1530. I agree with him. He sees 83, 84 wins for the Reds this year. And if that happens, that would be a good thing. And, I think the best thing is Terry Francona. He's going to get more wins out of that team. He's going to manage them better. And, Jake, I disagreed with you on the old manager. I really did. I'm like, man, give the guy a break. Hasn't been set up to succeed. His record in one-run games was abysmal. Absolutely. It was like Marvin Lewis on primetime football. It was terrible. And, it's funny.
What was that? 2 years ago, he broke the record for most in one season, most one-run losses in one season. It was like, I think we lost like 45 one-run games that season. It was
I don't know what the number was, but if he was 50-50 in one-run games, he'd probably still be manager right now.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. 100%. And you guys know, like in baseball, well, you might not, Eric. I don't know how well you follow baseball, but in baseball, that's when a baseball manager shines, right? Most of the time in baseball, it's the players going out, the lineup that's put together. That stuff matters. But those close games and those pitching changes and the movement of the lineup and all those other little tiny things that happen in those close games make a huge difference. That same year, I think, Mon, we had I want to say it was like 50-something runners thrown out at the plate. That to me is coaching.
Jake, yeah,
and that's you can't.
They got to stay healthy. They got to stay healthy. I don't think there's a Major League Baseball team that has had more injury issues than the Reds. I mean, remember the Ravens went like 3 years in a row, like everybody on their roster, star player was hurt. That's been the Reds the last few years.
Oh, 100%.
But if Martinez is a good pitcher, what's that?
Let's recreate that with the Ravens this year.
Yeah. No, I think they'll be okay if they stay healthy. They're going to be an exciting team to watch. And that damn ballpark doesn't do them any favors either. It's a launching pad. It's a launching pad.
It's a great ballpark. It's my favorite in the league, but it is a launching pad. I'm gonna throw out a name, and I'm gonna tell you right now, in October, you guys are gonna be like, Jake, you were right. But Gavin Lux, it was a huge addition to this Reds team. From the Dodgers. This guy, he's won World Series. He knows what it takes. And I'm telling you, I've seen interviews with this guy. He is going to make a huge difference on this. You talked about the Reds not having hitters. Watch Gavin Lux. I'm telling you, Mon, he is going to help carry this team through October.
Jake, I just hope we're talking about the Reds in July and August.
So is it going to be that good that you start a Reds podcast?
No, I'm not sure it's going to be that good.
The Reds Pulse, come on.
Listen. I in my Bengals room here that I sit in, one full side of the right side over here is all my Reds memorabilia and stuff. And Barry Larkin's my favorite baseball player to ever step on a diamond. He was like my hero growing up. He's a reason why I wore 11. Listen, as long as Barry Larkin is involved with the Reds and is a Reds fan, we got a chance. There's a window if Barry Larkin is still talking about the Reds. So, yeah, that's it. And Chris Sabo, Mon, I think Chris Sabo isn't he throwing out? He's throwing out the first pitch, right?
I'm not 100% sure. I'll tell you what, Eric.
I know he's at opening day tomorrow. I'm not sure if he's throwing out the first pitch, but
there'll be some Bengals there. There'll be some Bengals there. There'll be some Bengals there tomorrow.
Oh, there will be. Absolutely.
It's the biggest sporting event in Cincinnati every year. Opening day is the biggest single-day sporting event in Cincinnati. It really is.
Yeah.
There was a big debate of Cincinnati a baseball town or a football town. Make good arguments either way, but when it comes to opening day, nobody does it better, and it's the biggest day in Cincinnati for the year when it comes to sports.
Yeah. Oh, Jennifer said he's the grand marshal. I knew he was. I knew Sabo had something going on, but he was the grand dude. I mean, come on, that 90s team, we could have an entire 2-hour talk of just about that 90s team with Sabo and Davis and Larkin, the Nasty Boys. Oh my God.
Wire. We should do, if it's okay with our producer, Eric, if it's okay with you. Okay, we're not going to splinter off and do a Reds Pulse show, but we'll devote 5 to 10 minutes a week of the Bengals Pulse just chit-chatting about the Reds. How about that?
I'm in.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes.
Eric's like,
listen, I like the Reds. I'm not a diehard Bengals fan or not
listen. I have to go through week by week this entire basketball season of you and Zim.
Oh, is that a trade?
Going back and forth about basketball, and nobody watches the NBA. Nobody cares about the NBA.
We got Jake to watch the Timberwolves. Ryder is an Ant fan. We're gonna do 5 weeks of Reds and 5 minutes of Reds, 5 minutes of NBA playoff basketball. We're gonna make Jake break down NBA playoff basketball for 5 minutes every week, and then our subscribers will go way down. But that's
now
okay.
I do like college basketball. I'm big college basketball. I'm loving the tournament so far. A lot of good games. I was pulling for UConn, obviously, with Hurley being such a big Bengals fan. So I was bummed out about that. But yes, I love March college basketball. It's the best.
I'm excited about hockey, but that's another episode of the Bengals.
Yeah, we're not doing hockey. All right, well, guys, listen.
Get that puck out of here. Yeah. Go ahead, Jake. Get us out.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us. You guys are awesome. We love you. We appreciate you so much. As always, if you like this podcast, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you check us out on all the awesome podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. As always, guys, if you like this podcast, even if you just like my beard, give us that 5-star review. We very much appreciate that. It is a magnificent beard. As always, guys, make sure you follow Mon on Twitter at @TheFireMon. Follow me on Twitter at Coach Jake Owens9. Follow Eric on Twitter at eFlash with 2 H's 88. Follow the Cincinnati Pod on Twitter at Cincinnati Pod. And follow the Bengals Pulse on Twitter, as always, Bengals_Pulse9. The same on Instagram without the @Bengals_Pulse9. Guys, thank you so much again. Make sure you check out all the awesome podcasts right here on the Cincinnati Podcast Network. We will be back when, Eric? When are we back on?
As soon as news breaks. Other than that, TBD. Mon's doing some. He's landing an airplane up here. He's got something. Go ahead.
It's
Mon.
just that one thing from Angela is gonna. My wife's gonna see that about the wives thing. Talk to your wife, Jake. Talk to your wife. Okay.
Stay off of the chat, Rose. I apologize.
Hey, maybe there's a whole sideshow about the stress that the Bengals Pulse wives go through. I'll have to get together with them and we'll produce that on the side.
Stay off the chat.
Angela, I was joking, Angela. Hey man, you need to check into a clinic, dude. Calm down.
This is my I'm safe in here. She knows that this is the Bengal room. She's not allowed into the Bengal room. I'm safe in here. I just can't leave now. I can't leave the Bengal room right now.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting you to yell at her during the show. Come on, man.
Oh,
All right,
shut us down. Shut us down.
We have got to get out of here. Listen, hey, if any breaking news does happen, especially if it's involving a gentleman named Trey, we will jump on right away. And
And if Jake is no longer alive, Angela will sub in for him. Thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you next time.